Welcome back. My name's Geoff Bourgeois, CEO and founder at Palmera Pickleball. I have a special guest with us today, Janelle Braverman. She's a pickleballer. She got hooked. We're going to hear her story, but more importantly, she's looking to invest in the pickleball industry. And so we're going to get a window into her mind and the issues she's wrestling with today when she looks to come into the industry with some sort of an investment. And so welcome, Janelle. Thanks for being on with us.
Thanks, Jeff. No, it's exciting. I love talking about pickleball, and so I am open to wherever the conversation goes.
Well, thank you very much. You know, we actually connected on LinkedIn in the Pickleball Entrepreneurs group. So there's a group there that has a number of investors, some pro athletes, people that are CEOs and founders that are helping to shape this industry. And that's where we met. And that was the whole purpose of the group, was to create an ecosystem of people that are looking to make plays and add value and innovate and build in this industry, and therefore have thought leadership influence on it. Decisions around deploying capital are not small decisions. So Janelle, before we talk about entrepreneurship, can you start us off with just how you found the sport? What's your personal story? How did you get to the point where you're thinking, I'm sure early stages like pickleball, that sounds stupid, to, wow, let's deploy a bunch of wealth into this?
Totally. So, how I found the sport, I think probably starts with just a lifelong interest and love in recreational sports. Essentially, grew up playing soccer. I played water polo in high school. I swam. Really being a scholar athlete was a big part of my life. I'm gonna put a plug that means nothing when you're an adult, but in Miami-Dade County, which is where I grew up, I was the female scholar athlete in 2003. So
Cool.
so I mean, it was just a part of my life. I didn't go in to become a college athlete. Always felt competitive about it, but it wasn't something that was part of my path. I went to Dartmouth College and I played recreational sports there. I learned to play squash, which I feel like is somehow part of all of this. I think that was my first real introduction, I think, into racket sports. And so I had a kind of a pretty good squash racquetball era, I think, in my early 20s. And I'll fast forward the story, but I've played in different leagues and volleyball leagues and kickball and soccer and about a year and a half ago, pickleball. So I live about 10-minute walk from a park that has pickleball open plays. So I jumped in there and I really no guidance, just kind of the idea that I could make contact with the ball, get it over the net, and see where it went. And pretty quickly, and I think this is a common story. I mean, it does have a hook, right? Like you feel like you improve very quickly, and I just kind of started to feel like an athlete again, in a sense. And it's easy to pick up, but not that easy to master. And I just feel like it's within my range as I age. It seems like such a great sport to kind of take with me. I've somewhat retired from soccer, even though that sounds crazy to say, because again, never at kind of a high level, but I'm not signing up for leagues anymore. And I think that's probably more my speed to kind of get in that pickleball, you know, bandwagon as I age here. So that's a little bit of my path.
Excellent. Right. And soccer is so much fun, but you want to talk about wear and tear on the lower body. It's pretty rough.
Yeah.
And wearing cleats is no joke. I mean, that has a lot of implications, from foundation up into the body when you wear footwear like that. So pickleball absolutely is something, you can play into your 90s, as we've seen with. I don't see 90-year-olds playing soccer competitively. So I think you picked a good sport for the long game. What have you, play us through this part though, where you fall in love, or you find the sport, you fall in love with the sport, and now you're at the stage where you're thinking, I want to invest. What's your mindset? What kind of triggered that mindset shift, and take us through that journey into where you are now?
Sure. I think it's kind of two things happening at the same time. One thing is I grew up, my parents were entrepreneurs. They had check cashing businesses. And that was kind of a model that I had. I kind of have this voice in my shoulder being like, what do I want? What do I want to do from an entrepreneurial standpoint? So that was kind of sitting there. And then then now I'm doing this recreational thing and I'm finding that I've got to book, a week in advance. I know this is the story across, I mean, definitely here where I live and just in other parts as well, but I can't get on a court. I look at the options that are available. I play, I mean, I love where I play, but it's overlaid on tennis courts. There's like all these extra lines. Actually the very first time I played was almost in the evening time, the change of you know, dusk or whatever the timing is, and lighting was just terrible because it was just actually I was at a high school. I've played at a high school tennis course and then also at a city park. But so just those kinds of things being like, wow, so many people are here. We can't even get a court, and the conditions are um, sub average at best, right? And just opening my eyes, taking a look around, what's the infrastructure? And it's just scratching the surface. I mean, LA in particular, you don't want to cross town at 5 p.m. if you don't have to, And so neighborhood clubs and finding that just there's so much space to grow the sport, and also from a community standpoint, um, I wasn't finding I wasn't finding something that was near me, except for what I described, which had its place and still does have its place. So the kind of the where do I want to go as an entrepreneur, and I see a moment in something that I am really into myself, felt like it was all converging.
Okay, that's got a lot of just amazing ingredients for greatness, right? Something you're passionate about, something you're really into, something that you believe that you're gonna be integrating in your life for not just years but decades to come. That's cool. I know what that's like.
Mhm.
And then you have an inner entrepreneur that says to you, "Hey, hold on a sec. I'm bumping into quality issues here. Look at all this. Look at all these people that are, these thriving communities and activity, and people willing to transact and wanting to transact and wanting more that's not available." Okay, so there's a gap, and you've identified a number of gaps. And so how have you then gone from going, okay, I see gaps, to saying, I want to step in and make this giant move to maybe come into this industry and take that entrepreneurial step of deploying capital
Right.
to, like, get some pokers in the fire, but get a going concern happening here, and you have to try and make some money. You're not doing anything for charity. You're not setting up a nonprofit, right? So you need to have a business model that's going to be sustainable and have good margins. So to what degree have you kind of like gone through the ideation process and business planning process at this stage? Are you
Yeah.
just kind of scratching the surface and starting out, or are you sort of ready to make decisions?
Somewhere in between the two, maybe. Somewhere in between
Okay.
the two. I definitely feel like I've passed the scratching the surface. So I went to business school, which I should say I was such an incredible experience for me and really helped in a lot of ways in my just professional life. So I am kind of referencing a little bit of that in how I'm approaching this. Now I haven't had to translate that again as an entrepreneur. So a little bit of that, and then even more so, I think, has been this somewhat organic networking that is coming to fruition in conversations like this with people who are taking this seriously, like not as the sport with kind of the name that you're like, what, so I think through that networking, I've had some really substantive interactions, borderline, even mentoring conversations where I've taken so much from it. I've connected with owners who have done not just in theory, but are actually have a physical location to show for it, and I've seen what that looks like. Definitely, I've had some outreach effort with some consulting companies, and not as deep as it needs to be, but again, learning from people who have actually made this happen, and with that, translating some of that and putting it on using a spreadsheet to just play with different locations. This location at this rate with all these factors. What's my model? Am I going to be profitable in this scenario? So I have gone through a lot of that. Um, I've been working with a commercial broker, trying to find the space, again, getting highs and lows, excited about it, and then kind of reeling it back in because it doesn't make sense. So I know that it's all kind of part of the process, and I'm sticking with it, but it has been, yeah, it has not been straightforward, definitely from a location standpoint. there's a lot of owners that just are like, we don't want the use. We don't want the pickleball use. So yeah, that's a challenge.
It there and it's this is such a difficult period actually when you could easily just register a domain, get a company stood up, get a bank account, and start deploying capital. But you're obviously going, hold on a sec, this isn't my first rodeo. I've I'm educated in how to do this, and I know that there's no quick win. If it was super easy, everyone else would be doing it. So strategic entry into the market is of the utmost importance. And it doesn't mean that you're expecting perfection, but you got to know what you're doing. You got to understand, like, what's the economic engine? What's the go to market? What's the messaging and positioning? What's my target audience? How am I going to differentiate? And this very disciplined sort of go to market planning, right, is kind of what it sounds like you're grappling with right now. Now, one of the challenges that's, just as a sidebar for us entrepreneurs out there, you cannot find good quality market intelligence right now. And I don't mean that as a diss on anybody out there currently in the industry saying, here's the market intel. Excuse me. Except the facts stand for themselves. If I'm looking on social media one day and seeing references to 22 million users worldwide, and then 45 million, and then 60, and then this and that, and CAGRs of this, and it's just, guys, it's like nobody really has a good handle on what's happening in this market yet. The market data that's being done there's some nice tidbits, but there's nothing that's like McKinsey, Gartner, IDC, Forrester level yet. Okay. And that's coming, that's in the works, but, and those outfits that I mentioned might come in and cover this. I have never looked at to the degree to which they cover the sports industry, but I'm sure they do. There's a lot of money in sports, obviously. Pickleball's already got investors that are, billionaire class, as well as some very notable names from the sports industry already, from NFL to NBA and beyond. So there's no doubt that pickleball's here to stay. I think the question is, what kind of culture, what kind of industry does it become? How big can it get? How fast will it get there? Where's its peak? There's some evidence that, and it's not going to be the same everywhere. You're looking at Los Angeles. Could be you can't necessarily take what you're going to do in Los Angeles and say, well, if it works here or fails here, well, that's going to be true for all the other American cities. That would be foolish thinking. But if we zoom out at a macro scale, the dynamic in the States and what's going to work there, and the competitive landscape and the way to invest and what's required of a business to be successful is going to be very different than if you're over in Southeast Asia or Australia or somewhere in Europe. So market intelligence is, there's a real strong desire for it right now and hunger for it. There's no doubt that pickleball is growing organically. It's spreading around the world. There's no doubt about it. It might just be the world's fastest growing sport, not just America's fastest growing sport very soon. And that's encouraging. And padel, it's great. It's great to have this like friendly cousin right beside it with its own healthy growth trajectory. But it hit me the other day, the padel and pickleball are like the two leading sports of the 21st century. Mm-hmm. It seems like that's what we're facing. People aren't playing tennis as much. They're not bowling like they used to. They're not playing cricket as much as they used to. They're not doing fencing and duels as much as they used to. If you go back centuries, the kind of sports that we used to have, there's trends in sports, right? And pickleball and padel, racket sports are clearly trending. And I think for a variety of reasons, that will continue to be the case. So it's a good time. It's Bitcoin when it's at maybe around $100 right now. It could be like that. It could be maybe Bitcoin when it's at $20,000. I don't know, but it's somewhere, just crossing, it's crossed the chasm. It's no longer early adopter. It's into the early majority general buyer's market. This is a good time to come in. Talk to us what you're thinking about padel though. You're wrestling based on our past conversation with the, am I just pickleball or do I do padel? To what degree do I blend these things? Do I have to blend other things? And here's the key thing you're getting at. What's the user experience I'm trying to curate here for the audience that I'm going after? Mm-hmm. You're wrestling with that.
Yeah. So I've my personal kind of entree into this was my own personal experience with pickleball. Padel hasn't even hit me until this business venture started for me, really. So to me, Padel is even another frontier that I'm learning about, theoretically in a sense. But my exposure to it and what I understand from it is it's just they're cousins, they're sisters, brothers, whatever it is. And if the same way, hey, maybe if I tried squash and then now I have this extension of padel, or even with a pickleball mix, like I just think there's going to be so much crossover with people who have been interested in one sport compared to another. One strong point, just from a business sense, that I'm wondering about is, pickleball's in the parks. That's where I play. It's cheap. I know that there are people that are going to want the club experience and already articulate that and want that. But there's always kind of going to be maybe an option to go to the parks. I don't think that that's going to happen with Padel. I don't know. Maybe a city park is going to have some kind of arrangement where that kind of pops up, but I think it's a longer runway on that. So just purely from like a scarcity, if you like the sport and want exposure to it, you're going to have to pay for it. So
Correct.
that alone is really piquing my interest about Padel. It's more expensive to construct, and it's going to be more expensive for the end user as well. But I think, and I haven't come to a conclusion on it, but I think I want my facility to include at least one Padel court. I don't know how I'm going to come to that final decision there.
Well, personally, I was sizing, I have a number of indoor courts and then a number of outdoor pickleball. And I was pure pickleball when I started with the design. And outdoor was going to be 12 pickleball courts. And I've nixed it down to 5 so that I can have 3 padel courts and a lot more curated experience vibe, as opposed to just cramming courts like into like a big sardine can.
Yeah.
And just going for quantity. And I was never going like sacrificing quality, in that these were all like JDC certified courts with proper spacing and surfacing and lighting and volley or eye protection. Like we're doing this up at like even higher than pro grade standards. You can still go to a PPA and go into pro qualies and be playing on a taped up tennis court line where the ball doesn't bounce if it hits the taped line. It skids off the tape. And so the ability to come in and raise the bar in this sport, there's a lot of white space. There's a lot of opportunity, greenfield, however you want to say it. But I like your thinking with mixing padel, because the reality is in my research, there's very minimal crossover, but there is crossover, but they are two distinct audiences. They are two ecosystems completely, two different industries. So far, very little crossover. Now you go to Racket X, and it's funny. So many of the paddle makers, mm-hmm. I say padel. I mean, I should say paddle for the American audience or whoever else. Now,
no, it's paddle too, but yeah, paddle.
Okay, so they're making they have pickleball paddles that you've never heard of, mm-hmm. and then a lot of pickleball companies are eyeballing, should we go into padel? And then you've got entrepreneurs like us that are saying, well, we're going to enter with both, a careful balance of both. Mm-hmm. And if you're planning to be like a destination, it makes sense that you would do that. Or if you're planning to differentiate, because let's be honest, a lot of places that have invested and built courts have just gone with this mindset of squeezing courts, packing sardines into a can. Mm-hmm. And as you said earlier, when you get hooked on pickleball and you start getting into it 3-4 times a week, and you start to get into seeing the patterns and everything, you realize like, gosh darn, I should have been able to hit an ATP off that, but nope, I had to back off of it because there's the concrete wall I don't want to eat, right. Or there's the steel pillar that, and so player experience matters. There is an absolute segment of this massive market that is going to appreciate and be willing to afford higher quality experiences. And I think that's, it's good to hear that, you're thinking that way. I'm thinking that way. Now, let's talk about where you are in terms of like what you think you could use from anybody in the community for help right now. Is there a specific thing that you feel is like a hurdle or a challenge that you might need from somebody in the community? And I put this out there not because we want to blow up Janelle's inbox with a bunch of sales pitches and stuff like this. Absolutely not. Don't even bother hard selling. You'll probably get blocked. But if you think legitimately that there's something that your firm or that your expertise could lend a hand or help, then I'm sure she'd appreciate it. So Janelle, would you run us through maybe just a couple of things if anything comes to mind?
Sure, and I appreciate the question. I mean, that's really generous of you. I would say uh, a, a working partner, and this is kind of a tough ask because there's so many elements to actually, good partnerships. Of course, as a co-entrepreneur, I'd want, some a demonstration of skin in the game, but that's not the main driver. So if it's somebody who doesn't have to be the all in 100% of your time, but is not just a silent partner. It's somebody perhaps who is a little bit more tuned into what's going on in padel. Like, this is, like I mentioned, kind of another frontier. I, I think that's kind of what I'm looking for, and I'm somewhat selective, I think, about that as well, because I want it to be the right match. But I also would just love to have more conversations like this. I mean, honestly, I'm so grateful that you're interested in talking to me, and I'm happy to share where I'm at with all of this. But I do want to connect with not just entrepreneurs, but individuals taking this game seriously, taking the sport seriously, and growing the sport in some way. I mean, I've had conversations with software developers who are just passionate about building a social network, and that's cool. I love that. I was introduced to different conferences or things like that I could attend. So, the what am I looking for? Certainly, anybody who wants to have a meaningful interaction about how to grow the sport, and I guess the next level of that, if you're in Southern California and really want to, again, in a meaningful way, some skin in the game financially, but really just as a working partner, definitely would love to have a conversation.
That's great. And in my experience, there's a lot of passionate people that are looking to deploy capital into sports, into media companies, into the future of humanity. That sport is a big part of that. And I think they're looking, Janelle, in a lot of cases for quality operators that share a passion for the sport, but also bring a lot of business acumen to the table. So, people don't want to deploy capital into some corporate structure that doesn't have a strong operator or a strong financial backbone or a buttoned down game plan for go to market. So it's great to hear that you're working on these things. And what I'd like to do, if you ever decide to come out of stealth mode or you want to come back on the show, you're more than welcome to. We'd love to track your story and your progress. That's a big part of what this show is all about, is actually to look at the movers and shakers in this industry, to follow different stories, to look at what's happening in the trends and analyze this market. And fundamentally, too, to just build together. Instead of it being an ecosystem of cutthroat competition and win-lose kind of mindset, if we come into this as win-win capitalists, we can build something that's truly beautiful, and it'll make it the culture of the sport is great on the court. Let's make it great off the court too. And I'm convinced that that's going to help just spread the joy of pickleball. So Janelle, thank you very much for joining us. If you want someone to get in touch, what's the best way? LinkedIn, I guess?
LinkedIn is great. Janelle Braverman. You can find me that way. You can also email me, janellebraverman@gmail. That would be the best way.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on the show, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye for now. You can follow us on Instagram. We have a YouTube channel as well. We're going to be updating the YouTube channel with things like tutorials and other information on Instagram. That's how you can also keep in touch with us or follow our progress at different events that we're going to. And lastly, you can go to palmerapickleball.com and you can sign up to our email newsletter. We will be having a monthly email newsletter, so that's another way that you can follow our progress. But we hope that you'll follow this show, and if you ever feel like reaching out to us, you can get us on Instagram or subscribe to the email and you'll find other contact methods there.